Would you dare to stay in a haunted house? This man had just disembarked from the train. And since it was late, he reluctantly accepted the real estate agent's offer for this house. Though the place appeared old and dilapidated, the thought of working for 2 months before moving on, combined with the agent's friendly service, made him indifferent to the situation. However, as soon as the man stepped inside and shut the door, a devious smile crept across the agent's face. Despite the elder's warning that the room was haunted, the young man, embodying the spirit of modernity, dismissed such superstitions. He muttered under his breath about how ridiculous it was to believe in such things as he gazed down the dark hallway. Little did he know, hands were slowly reaching out for him from behind. Meanwhile, in the room, a tenant was experiencing horrors beyond comprehension. In the shadows, a demon stealthily approached. Time swiftly passed to the next day. The real estate agent was jolted awake by a punch. Standing before him was Old Lady Long, accompanied by a police officer investigating the case. It turned out he had been knocked to the ground and passed out the night before. The tenant had died of a heart attack in the same night. While this old, crumbling house had no surveillance cameras. With a grim expression, Old Lady Long interrogated him about why he had rented out a haunted house. Now, he had caused the tenant's death. The once skeptical agent now found cold sweat dripping down his forehead. A crowd had gathered around the house, eager to witness the spectacle. Among the crowd was a man named Tang Ka, a member of the Ye Than Tu organization, responsible for investigating this bizarre case. However, he sensed no supernatural forces or energy. It appeared that this task would be quite challenging. At that moment, he began to perform hand signs to activate his magical watch. This was the sacred cedar of Taoism, possessing the power to probe and provide substantial support. It could observe the colors of souls around. Blue represented ordinary humans, white for the deceased, yellow for those like the protagonist, and red indicated demonic beings. At that moment, his left eye emitted a golden light. Under the cedar's guidance, the entire building suddenly became transparent, revealing its true form. Yet, as he scanned the area, he found no targets. Nevertheless, the challenges only fueled his intrigue. Just then, a voice called out to him. Turning around, he saw a chubby little boy sniffling. The boy reasoned that Tang Ka's recent movements were signs of fire. Proudly, he declared that he knew as well. He then raised his hand, mimicking a gesture, and unleashed a torrent of water. But when he glanced to the side, Tang Ka had vanished. Even the boy's lollipop had disappeared. At that moment, Tang Ka was sitting on the roof behind, sneering disdainfully. What I just did wasn't ninja work, it was a countdown. He then pondered over this mission, realizing just how well hidden the target truly was. It seems like you need to return and think carefully about how to capture them. When you find them, you must teach them a powerful lesson. This girl wants to rent a haunted house for a live stream. Despite being warned that someone died last night, she shows no fear. The agent, feeling helpless, hands her the keys. Meanwhile, he cannot keep up. The girl sits at the dining table eating noodles. Beneath the table, a wicked hand stealthily reaches out. It immediately moves towards her ankle. But she suddenly stands up, remembering she hasn't stuck up her idol's pictures not only on the door but also on the window. At that moment, the light from the ceiling flickers several times before going out completely. Nearby, the closet emits strange sounds. The girl appears terrified but gathers her courage to step forward and loudly calls. Whoever is in there, come out. At that moment, the closet door trembles and opens a crack. A terrifying face slowly emerges. It turns out to be a friend. The girl suddenly pales and rushes to grasp the closet door, pulling it open with all her might. Then, she unzips her bag, and out flies a rooster with glowing red eyes. This rooster is named Wo-Wo, a four-legged black rooster that can summon any spirit into existence. Wo-Wo knows it's time to make his appearance. He flaps his wings and flies toward the closet. The girl slams the door shut with all her strength. Moments later, the inside erupts with loud crashes and horrific screams. Finally, the closet door can't withstand it and shatters into pieces. Wo-Wo bursts out and is shoved into a backpack. Then, a gaunt demon crawls out from within. It strides menacingly toward the girl, growling with anger. I will eat you. Instantly, it opens its mouth wide like a basin, ready to bite her. Rows of sharp fangs sprout from its mouth, looking terrifying, but in the next moment, it is sent crashing to the ground by a punch. Terrified, the demon stutters. Who are you? The girl smirks disdainfully. In the air, she draws a glowing circle, and the camouflage covering her begins to fade away. I am Tang Ka, the champion of spirit capturing from U City. A flicker of fear crosses the demon's eyes. Realizing she is from U City, Tang Ka looks down on it. even if this demon's hiding abilities are superior to normal. But considering strength, just a finger from you could handle it. The demon, now filled with dread, attempts to flee, but Wo's power restrains it, tearing its body with several wounds. It tries to dash for the exit, but as soon as it touches the door, a piercing sound from behind halts it in its tracks. A blinding golden light erupts, shocking it and revealing its true form. Tang Ka was not expecting this demon to be so weak he hadn't even needed to lift a finger. The true form of this once terrifying demon is merely a plump little creature. It turned out to be just a foolish spirit. Seeing it tremble in fear, Tang Ka gently tapped its head with one finger. The pitiful little spirit explained that it couldn't leave, it had to wait for someone. It then recounted its experiences once living in ancient times. It was naturally shy. The only thing it excelled at was hiding. Because of this, it was used by the Spirit City. And later, when their collaboration was exposed, the entire team was wiped out, leaving it as the sole survivor. However, it was badly injured and had hidden away in this cupboard to sleep. Upon waking, it found itself in the modern world. A blind old woman discovered it, and they lived together, treating each other kindly. But one day, the old woman fell to the ground and did not wake up. No matter how much it called, there was no response, and then some people came to carry her away. Subsequently, a blind old woman found him, and they lived together. The old woman was very kind to him, but one day, she fell to the ground and fell asleep, unresponsive no matter how he called. After a while, some people came and carried her away. Thus, the little spirit decided to wait here for the old woman to wake up, hoping to return. Upon hearing this, Tang Ka understood the story and realized that the old woman had passed away. Unable to bear the incessant chatter of the little spirit, he interrupted her and opened the information scanning app. Scanning a bit of information, the screen lit up with the results target identified as the elder spirit. An extinct species, with extinction occurring during the Northern Jiang era due to hunting. After reviewing, Tang Ka focused intently on the little spirit and remarked, even if there are few tasks to accomplish, capturing you is still quite intriguing. But capturing you is indeed engaging, and the extinct spirits in the black market hold great value. The mention of the black market sent the little spirit into a frenzy of horrifying thoughts, causing her to cry out and struggle. Seeing this, Tang Ka quickly retracted his teasing words. He gently lifted the little spirit and reassured her that he wouldn't sell her off, and that the old woman would never return. From now on, you need not feel lonely, frightened, or helpless anymore, for I will protect you. Elder spirit, I shall name you Little Black. Upon hearing that someone was willing to accept her, the little spirit was moved to tears and nodded earnestly in agreement. Soon after, Tang Ka produced a miniature Xu Long, drawing Little Black inside it. Amidst her cries, Little Black was completely sucked into the Xu Long, convinced that Tang Ka had tricked her. Trapped, she screamed that all humans were deceitful. However, Tang Ka chose not to clarify. Instead, he pulled out his phone, glanced at the mission submission interface, and pressed the failure button, concealing the little spirit's whereabouts. Meanwhile, at a bustling construction site, some workers were animatedly discussing that they had unearthed an artifact, but this one looked like a jar, estimated to weigh several hundred pounds, wrapped in 2 thick ropes. Some were very curious, saying it resembled a broken wine jar at their home, while others claimed it looked like a vegetable pot. At this moment, a man named Old Zhang stepped forward. Stop guessing and just open it to find out instantly. He entered and saw the lid filled with strange characters that looked like they were scratched by a dog. Old Zhang couldn't make sense of it, so he opened the lid. As the lid fell to the ground, the bizarre characters slowly dissolved into the air. After a while, Old Zhang remained unresponsive. A few people behind him called out, wanting to take a look, but they had no idea that Old Zhang was already bleeding from his nose, his body resembling that of a desiccated corpse. The energy from his body was flowing toward this strange vessel. Meanwhile, on a rain-soaked night, a girl was speeding down the road. She had just accepted a large order but was running late. At this moment, she decided to accelerate. Fortunately, the road was relatively empty at night. At this speed, she would definitely make it. But just then, she collided with something. The girl was thrown off her bike, crashing hard onto the ground. Confused, she wondered what she had hit. As the road ahead was clearly empty, the rain poured down heavier, drenching the scene. Suddenly, a terrifying monster gradually emerged. This girl was named Zhuang Xiaoran. Earlier that morning, she had argued with her relatives. Her mother had abandoned them when she was young, and her father had passed away, forcing her to live with her relatives. She needed to earn money to search for her mother, the woman she longed to call Mom, hoping to make her regret leaving her behind. But now, she had only saved up half of what she needed. If she worked a little harder, she was sure to achieve her goal soon. Her aunt had come knocking that morning, complaining that she didn't wake up early enough. Coming home late didn't help at all. And then borrowing food was just shameless. But under this roof, one couldn't help but bow their head. Xiaoran couldn't make excuses. She could only think about asking her aunt if there was anywhere else to stay. In the living room, the woman continued to voice her grievances. Initially claiming she would only stay a few days, she had now been there for nearly half a year. The man, however, paid no mind since after all, she was his niece. Everyone else seemed indifferent who truly cared, frustrated that she couldn't make herself understood. The woman stormed off to work. After her aunt left, Xiaoran sighed in relief and headed to the bathroom to wash her face. But while she was washing, the back door suddenly creaked open. The man looked at Zhang Xiaoran's figure with an ambiguous gaze. Little did he know, he had developed sinister thoughts about his own niece. While Xiaoran was washing her face, she suddenly felt someone standing behind her. Turning around, she discovered her uncle had been there without her noticing. He explained that he had come to grab some dental floss. Xiaoran still felt uneasy. Even though this was her own home, it didn't mean she could act freely. The man, using the pretext of retrieving dental floss, unexpectedly pressed close to her. The distance was too close, she could even smell the scent from her hair. Things were escalating beyond comfort. He stared intently at her body with ill intent, reminiscing about when he used to carry her around as a child. "I can't believe you've grown up so fast," he said, reflecting on how just a blink of an eye had transformed her into a woman. He even inquired about her phone balance, which was 500.000. A girl coming home late like this could easily lead others to misconstrue her intentions. Moments later, he leans close to Xiaoyan's ear and says with a smile that if she needs money, all she has to do is listen to him, and he will give it to her. Xiaoyan feels deeply disappointed. She never expected her seemingly kind uncle to be such a person. For a loathsome person like him, she had no desire to utter another word. Turning her back, she delivered a swift kick to his sensitive spot and walked away with an air of liberation. But now, she had to think of a new place to stay. Xiaoyan wheeled her luggage down the street, catching sight of a warm, happy family of 3, which stirred a pang of sadness within her. However, she quickly regained her composure, her gaze resolute as she reminded herself that today she must strive to earn money. To achieve this goal, she had to juggle multiple jobs, starting at 9 a.m. as a modeling intern, then at 1 p.m. serving tables at a restaurant, and finally at 6 p.m., she would be out delivering orders. Watching Xiaoyan's silhouette fade away, a student beside her wondered why such a delightful girl chose delivery work. The teacher chuckled and replied, "Although I don't know why she works so hard, I can confidently say that she truly loves riding her motorcycle. Thus, for her, delivering orders might just be a way to relieve daily stress." Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a pedestrian street where Tang Ka was gazing at the goods before him, unsure of what to choose. Just then, the delivery girl, and Xiaoyan, whizzed by on her bike. At that moment, the compass strapped to Tang Ka's side suddenly shook violently. Filled with curiosity, he opened it to check, but the needle spun wildly. Then, countless red threads appeared, weaving through the bustling crowd, ultimately latching onto Xiaoyan. At this moment, Tang Ka recalled the words of his mentor from his childhood: the black butterfly compass could locate people, objects, and even spirits. It could also predict fortune and misfortune. If the red thread appeared, it meant a deadly connection, and whoever was linked would surely meet their end. Countless possibilities raced through Tang Ka's mind as he gazed at the dancing red thread. Looking towards the direction of the flying red thread in this crowded place made it exceedingly difficult to search. Moreover, each person carried their own fate even with a new compass. He couldn't do anything. Just then, a ringing echoed from his pocket. He pulled out his phone to take a look. To his surprise, an order had been sent down from above. Among them was a rare grader order. The system notified him that he had the right to accept it. Would he like to proceed viewing the information on his phone? Tang Ka's face broke into a radiant smile. Today was indeed a fortuitous day. The scene shifted. Currently, at the excavation site, the discovery of the ancient urn had become a hot topic of discussion. Many workers rushed over to take a look. However, strangely, the initial discoverers of the urn had vanished without a trace. At that moment, someone noticed something peculiar around the urn. Upon stepping closer, they found a chaotic mess of clothes and shoes, and the ground was stained with dark liquid. The workers gradually gathered, discussing the mysterious disappearances and the scattered garments. Just then, the urn suddenly began to bubble ominously. A gurgling sound echoed as the crowd whispered in unease. Sensing something was about to rise, just as they feared, a head slowly emerged from the depths of the vessel. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded, and a colossal monster burst forth. The workers, upon seeing it, were drenched in cold sweat, their hearts racing in terror. On the shore sat a withered corpse, its body entwined with roots. This cadaver was the sacrificial offering of an ancient village, a seal against malevolent spirits. Anyone who dared to drive a stake into this body would lose their ability to commit evil, lest they face dire consequences. The workers had never witnessed such a bizarre spectacle. Panic set in as they scrambled in all directions, shouting that a ghost was among them. But it was too late. The corpse opened its mouth, and one worker's essence drained from his eyes and mouth, followed by another, and then more, one after another. All of their essences converged into the mouth of the corpse. Even those workers standing far off were not spared. They too slowly gathered, forming a colossal sphere composed of countless bodies. Beneath this ominous globe lay the corpse, still seated by the lake. As the life force continuously surged forth, the workers shrank back like deflating balloons, quickly dissolving into a pool of black liquid, leaving only their clothes and helmets floating in the air. Meanwhile, the corpse, now sated, leapt into the lake. A golden light erupted from its eyes as it tilted its head skyward and screamed, its body enveloped in a terrifying aura. Suddenly, flesh began to sprout from its form. In the distance, a cracking sound was heard as a bony tail emerged. The atmosphere exploded with a powerful energy. This creature, a manifestation of 1,000 years of accumulated resentment, possessed an undying body and 4 eyes capable of seeing the souls of others. This body was blessed with immortality and heightened instincts, known as the Yuan Tiao. The corpse that had slept for a millennium absorbed all the life force of the workers, transforming into the Yuan Tiao. But as it gazed upon its own arm, a fog of confusion enveloped it. Who am I? Why have I become this way? Just then, a raindrop landed in its palm. This drop awoke deep-seated memories within its mind. It was a rainy day when the villagers coldly regarded it before being dragged to the sacrificial altar. Soon after, several figures rushed in to restrain its body, violently driving stakes into it. Instantly, a sensation of pain like tearing flesh surged through it. It yearned to cry out for help, but the surrounding people were reveling in joy. In the distance, a youth with white hair laughed merrily. The memories were hazy and incomplete, yet it roared in rage, calling out a name: Batten. As its muscles tensed, the stake driven deep into its back only sank further. Soon after, the stake emitted a faint pressure, and the Yuan Tiao could no longer withstand the excruciating pain, collapsing to the ground. Yet, trouble was not limited to the stake in its back. Figures were approaching from afar. In a flash, the Yuan Tiao activated its 4 eyes. This was his unique ability, allowing him to observe targets from afar, their souls and colors, their very essence. As his vision expanded, he noticed Tang Ka approaching. Though he didn't recognize him, his instincts screamed for him to flee swiftly. Although restrained by the nail that limits his power, Nguyen Chiu has now become extremely weak. However, he refuses to remain idle. His heart is filled with hatred, and he must find that person to return all the suffering he has endured over the years. Even if it takes 1.000 years, even if it takes 10.000 years, he will not give up. As he was crossing the road, a blinding light suddenly rushed towards him. Immediately after, there was a collision, and Chiu Enna was thrown to the side, while Nguyen Chiu, who had just undergone an upgrade, was weakened from being tortured by the soldiers. While fleeing, he was hit by a motorcycle. He thought he was being attacked, but the woman who hit him was severely injured. However, there was no time to think. At that moment, Nguyen Chiu sensed that those pursuing him were closing in, and in his current state, he was absolutely no match for those pursuers. Now, there was only one option left. After making his decision, he slowly walked towards Chiu Enna. To the eyes of ordinary people, souls are invisible, only appearing as faint images blurred by the falling rain. They thought they were seeing an illusion, and Chiu Enna, gravely injured and unable to bear it any longer, closed her eyes. At that moment, Nguyen Chiu had reached her, while the souls behind him swayed like seaweed, moving closer. Immediately after, they entered her body, as more and more souls were released, and Chiu Enna was now completely enveloped. The souls, like liquid, seeped into her wounds and began the process of healing, traveling through her bloodstream toward her heart. The cells merged with the souls, causing a mutation. After the integration was complete, and Chiu Enna opened her eyes, which now resembled those of a strange beast. As she awoke, Nguyen Chiu disappeared. The nail, having lost its target, fell to the ground. At the same time, Tang Ka finally arrived at the construction site, but as he looked around, He realized he was too late. The entire site was now lifeless. It was shocking that so much had changed in such a short time. So many people had died. It seemed he needed to find him quickly. As he was thinking about his next move, the compass on his waist began to shake violently. Meanwhile, Ena had left the scene, heading straight toward the city. At that moment, a flash of lightning lit up the sky. His face had begun to show the features of Ena. And Ena, who had just been in an accident, was now merged with another being. At this moment, he was walking along the road back to the city. A small cat crossed his path. Its eyes filled with confusion, as if it were questioning him with a bewildered gaze. Next, in his eyes, the girl in front of him gradually revealed her true form as Ena. As she passed by, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But the cat, watching her figure, displayed a ferocious expression. Ena, rare to encounter in 100 years. And yet I crossed paths with one. But now, she appears so fragile. As these thoughts crossed his mind, the cat immediately grew greedy, turning back to cry out to the girl, seizing this opportunity to consume her. The influx of spiritual energy would surge immensely. However, Yuan Tiao remained unfazed. Just as he was about to be attacked, he suddenly turned his head, his icy gaze locking onto the creature. His finger brushed past a streak of deep golden light that erupted violently. The street light, swept by the force of Yu Bok, was instantly split in half. The nearest beloved cat was also cleaved in two. He never expected such formidable power from his opponent. Clearly weak, yet with just a flick of a finger, he had been bested. At that moment, regret washed over him. If he had known, he would have continued to feign cuteness to snag a meal. But now, it was far too late. The corners of Yuan Tiao's mouth curled upwards as he melded into this body, simultaneously breaking free from the soldiers vying for him. He was no longer bound. His entire strength had been restored. At this moment, he decided to find someone to test his current power. He crouched down, gathering momentum, and instantly soared into the sky, flying off into the distance. Before long, he spotted a city ahead. A brilliant golden light streaked across the sky as Yuan Tiao landed atop a skyscraper. Surveying the bustling streets below, he found himself bewildered, unable to comprehend why the people in the city dressed so scantily. Yet, he was certain that here resided descendants of the rustic folk. We shall ensure their complete annihilation. Contemplating vengeance, he opened his mouth wide, unleashing a torrent of green light. Instantly, the crowd below clutched their throats, gasping for air, while terrified souls erupted from their bodies, fleeing in panic. The influence grew ever wider. Millions of terrified souls from across the city converged upon the rooftop. Meanwhile, Yuan Tiao was ravenously absorbing this colossal spiritual power. He was determined to drain the souls of all the city's residents to exact his revenge. Alarms blared at the headquarters of Ye Than too. Looking at the large screen in the command room, warning signals flashed incessantly, the crisis rapidly expanding into the red zone. General Han Long Koi's face darkened. He never expected such a situation to arise so soon after taking office. Wasn't this the matter of Zhuang Xiaoran? Where is that brat now? Even if he could contact him, it might be too late. Perhaps the only option left was to summon someone from that other world. Just as Han Long Koi was hesitating, a subordinate rushed in to report. Data indicated that in less than 3 minutes, the residents of Bangsun would be wiped out. Recently, there was only one Tang Ka-class Yersi who had been dispatched to him. But given his current position, it seemed unlikely they would reach in time. Hearing this, Han Long Koi no longer hesitated, immediately arranging an emergency contact with the protection team and ordering 2 guards to be dispatched at once. The subordinate exclaimed in astonishment, "Are we really mobilizing the guards?" The guards were beings from another world. Part of the protection team of Ye Than, responsible for security at the Lang Din prison, including any severe incidents caused by spirit beings. At this moment, the scene transitioned. On the towering structure, Nguyen Tu was frantically absorbing an immense amount of soul power. As he finally completed the process, he sensed a disturbance from behind. Turning his head, he was startled to see a strange symbol and a red beam of light shoot across the surface of the distant building. A human figure emerged. As the light dissipated, 2 guards, one stout and one thin, stood firm with bronze masks covering their faces, witnessing only a single Ye Lin before them. The stout one scoffed, "We were sent here just to deal with one Ye Lin." The thin one reminded him to take the situation seriously. According to the information provided by the humans, their target was a Ye Lin that rarely appeared in hundreds of years. And even more perplexing, it was a woman. This sounded bizarre. After hearing this, the stout one immediately leaped forward. he decided to test his might against her. In an instant, he charged forward, his claws slicing through the air, creating a streak of golden light. Meanwhile, Nguyen Chu was not idle. He smiled, gathering strength in his legs and rushing ahead. In the blink of an eye, his knee collided with the stout one's face. The stout guard was sent sprawling backward. Quickly regaining his footing, he fell, but fortune smiled upon him as a nearby steel beam broke his fall, preventing him from hitting the ground. The thin one observed this with a calm demeanor. As Nguyen Chu finished off the stout one, he had drawn near. "It seems you're much stronger than him." Before he could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly shifted, and he swiftly adjusted his stance to create some distance. Without warning, he opened his mouth, releasing the soul power he had just absorbed uncontrollably, forming a burst of green light that shot straight into the sky. The soul that Nguyen Chu had just absorbed escaped his grasp, and one of his eyes returned to its normal state. At that moment, Chu Enna had regained part of her consciousness. However, she realized that both her head and body were beyond her control. Meanwhile, Nguyen Chu sensed the situation worsening. After struggling to regain his strength, it was a pity to see it slip away. The thin one, witnessing this scene, was equally bewildered by the unfolding events. He then inquired about the situation. Seeking clarification, the stout one responded that based on the analysis of the previous strike, Nguyen Chu's speed and strength were both at A-rank. Then what remains is defense. I must test it myself. At that moment, Nguyen Chu's expression turned ferocious as he exerted all his might to suppress Chu Enna's consciousness. His pupils gradually shifted back to a golden hue, while the thin one drew his weapon, the ice jade sword. Instantly, a wall of ice formed, releasing a chilling aura that momentarily immobilized Nguyen Chu. However, just moments later, he shattered the ice and broke free. Energy surged around his body, pulsating with intensity. The thin one immediately retreated, on high alert, while the stout one unexpectedly launched a surprise attack from behind. A solid strike landed, but he did not linger. Instead, he withdrew instantly. The thin one raised his sword skyward, directing it towards Nguyen Chu. Suddenly, dozens of black spikes shot down, pressing tightly towards him. As the shimmering sword light descended from the frail figure's hand, a barrage of dark projectiles relentlessly targeted the enemy. After a prolonged moment of chaos, a cloud of dust dissipated, restoring the landscape. At that moment, the voice of Yuan Tiao echoed. "How ridiculous! You think you can defeat me with such feeble power?" Clearly, these techniques inflicted no harm upon him whatsoever. The thin man, witnessing this scene, couldn't help but admire. The defense was indeed at the A-grade level. Yuan Tiao's strength was truly formidable. He then turned to glance at the stout figure. The stout man had just completed gathering his energy, unleashing a dark orb from his hands. Yuan Tiao, eager to charge forward, suddenly found his body immobilized. He realized he was ensnared by a formation that the stout man had meticulously prepared. As the formation activated, the energy of heaven and earth surged, trapping Yuan Tiao not only physically but also plunging his consciousness into a deep slumber. Soon after, Yuan Tiao knelt down, slipping into a state of unconsciousness. However, he proved to be far stronger than anticipated. Despite this, the formation could only confine him for 2 minutes. The stout man couldn't help but exclaim, "What on earth has he been through in his life? He must possess thousands of years of cultivation." Even without consciousness, he had entered a state of self-preservation. Short-term attacks could do nothing against him. It was astonishing how powerful Yuan Tiao was. Even an A-grade beastmaster was powerless against him. The commander, through the flying device, inquired about the battle situation. He soon discovered that while the soul had been freed, Yuan Tiao was under control. However, before they could eliminate him, the souls could not return to their bodies. If Yuan Tiao broke the seal and was killed, it would be too late. The souls in the sky, if left wandering for too long, would gradually dissipate, leading to the complete death of those who had lost their souls. They were now caught in a dilemma. Yet, they had to save the residents. Han Longkush's expression turned grave as he asked if there was any solution. The thin man earnestly replied, "Actually, there is a way. Exile." Upon hearing this term, Han Longkoi broke out in a cold sweat. The subordinates behind him were equally stunned, unable to believe it. Previously, he had heard a colleague mention that within the headquarters lay a mysterious gem capable of sealing numerous ancient spirits inside, thus allowing humans to control them. That place was referred to as the Third World. However, to exile Yuan Tiao there required time to report to superiors. Acting independently would surely result in punishment. Han Longkoi, resolute, furrowed his brow and declared, "Exile him immediately." Hearing this, The subordinates were left speechless. They reminded him that they had yet to report. Han Longkush's voice rang out again. The lives of the people are at stake, there's no time left. I will bear all consequences. The thin man confirmed once more, and without hesitation, he began forming the seal. Then, numerous pale golden rings radiated outward. Next, he chanted a passage from the incantation. No sooner had he spoken than a spark of golden light flickered at his fingertip, shooting skyward. At that moment, the sky cracked open like a swirling vortex. The golden light spread in all directions. And below, Tang Qi located this place with precision. The red thread on the compass was now guiding him here. Tang Qi gazed at the sky with a serious expression. It was truly coincidental. All to save a soul. It's time to banish Yuan Tiao to the third world. As the thin man finished chanting the incantation, the sky spiraled into a vortex. A golden light radiated outward, and from within this whirlwind emerged a colossal head, its mouth wide open, unleashing a torrent of golden light. The beam shot directly at those who had lost consciousness. Under the brilliance of the light pillar, Yuan Tiao was bound, and the protective barrier shattered. His body shot skyward. At this moment, the thread on the compass was drawing closer to its target. Observing this scene, Tang Qi felt a twinge of doubt. Why was the same kind of murderous aura emanating from him? However, this shadow seemed familiar. After a moment of contemplation, he realized it was the girl on the motorcycle he had brushed past tonight. Immediately, he channeled his spiritual energy and, upon scanning, discovered that his soul had merged with the demon spirit. This meant he was half human. This was the first time Tang Qi encountered such a situation, and he felt a surge of excitement. Without hesitation, he soared into the light pillar. An opportunity like this was rare as a 1,000-year comet. He had long desired to enter that world. Moments later, he stood before the gigantic beast and without a moment's pause, dove right in. Everyone watched in wide-eyed bewilderment. Had that kid lost his mind? A subordinate cautiously asked if the thin man could release Tang Qi. But he received a negative response from Han Longkoi. That's a one-way trip. No one has ever dared to enter. We don't even know what severe consequences could arise. Moreover, even if he returns alive, I will have to eliminate him. That kid has never listened to a word. Meanwhile, in the chaotic world, a massive light column also illuminated the dark surroundings. The demon spirits below were closely monitoring all that transpired. A colossal light beam appeared in the sky, and the demon spirits below, who were feasting, caught sight of it. His name was Lei Yin. In this gloom, he had lost track of how many years he had endured. To grow stronger, he fought against other demon spirits each day. Finally, he awaited this moment. As he soared into the sky, he silently vowed to find a city upon leaving and confront the monster that had sealed him away. However, as he reached out, flames suddenly engulfed his arm, and a surge of energy erupted in the void, engulfing him in flames. When the light vanished, his intact body was left with only one eye. Yet, with his abilities, as long as a single organ remained, he could restore his original form. But just at that moment, he collided with a face. The figure immediately raised a cruel hand and swung it toward him, screaming something horrifying. How disgusting! Zhuang Xiaoran followed the shadow of his sister landing on the ground. But when he looked around, he realized she was nowhere near him. He stood frozen, a feeling of frustration swelling within him. However, he caught the attention of a forest-dwelling creature named Lala. This beast, resembling a wild boar, stared hungrily at Zhuang Xiaoran, drool dripping onto the ground. Initially, it had only wanted to see who was the unfortunate soul trapped here. But it never expected to encounter a human. Truly, a delicious offering presented on a silver platter. Yet, it remained oblivious that the young man before it was also gazing back. A sinister smile creeping across his face. Simultaneously, and Chu Nu lay on the ground, her features gradually fading from existence. After a moment, he abruptly sprang to his feet, exclaiming that the delivery would be delayed. In his memory, he was perhaps delivering goods before the collision, awakening to the sight of green fireworks. Yet, he discovered there was not a single wound on his body, and he found himself in this strange place. Looking around, aside from the dilapidated houses, there was no sign of life. Just as he pondered this, an impending danger loomed near. A creature opened its mouth wide, preparing to strike, now targeting Zhuang Xiaoran. A man and a cat were sprinting wildly through the streets. Zhuang Xiaoran sat above, calm and collected, while Lala was drenched in cold sweat, not daring to stop. It was not only because of the malevolent being perched on its back but also due to the countless terrifying creatures pursuing them. A bloodied mouth was aimed at Chu Nu. But in that moment, he felt an instinctual sense of danger and quickly ducked to avoid it. Slipping away like a gust of wind, Everything unfolded in an instant. Looking back at his own nimbleness and speed, he couldn't comprehend how he had managed that. Then he turned his head up to the rooftop. The creature, having retracted its neck, now stared at him with malicious eyes, and Qiu Nu immediately froze, thinking to herself, what on earth is that so disgusting? As fear surged within her. She instinctively turned to flee, but the creature suddenly leaped in front of her. It immediately stood tall. This was a large creature adorned with eye-like patterns on its back, capable of invoking the most painful and terrifying memories in its adversaries, rendering them incapable of fighting back. The patterns on its body emitted an ethereal blue glow. Moments later, and Qiu Nu, with dazed eyes, fell into her own memories. She recalled the first time she cried after falling while learning to ride a bike. Her parents arguing over educational matters. Yet the three of them were still very happy. But not long after, her father fell gravely ill. She sat by the bedside, crying for the second time. Her mother was busy earning money for medicine while also taking care of the household. Fortunately, after 3 years, her father recovered to his former self, and the family was joyful once more. Yet sadly, happiness did not last long as her father fell ill again. Unable to bear the burden any longer, mother chose to follow another man. Watching her get into the car with him marked the third time he cried. This time, father succumbed to his illness. At father's funeral, and Qiu Nu shed her final tears. From that moment on, she became an orphan, taken care of by relatives who came and went. But as time passed, those who were called family gradually grew weary of her. Eventually, a few of them discussed and decided to send her back to her mother. However, the first words from her mother after such a long separation were etched forever in Qiu Nu's memory. As she was attacked by a vengeful spirit, she slipped into a trance, recalling the moment father passed away. The tale of abandonment by her mother, the disdain from relatives wanting to bring her back, weighed heavily on her mind. Previously, she had heard whispers that her mother's current husband had failed in business and was now hiding from creditors in their hometown. Seeing her mother's weary appearance softened and Qiu Nu's resentment just a little. She had no expectations, only a yearning to embrace her mother one last time. However, the next words from her mother left her frozen in disbelief. Go back home, I have no money for you. Hearing those words, and Qiu Nu felt a bitterness that pierced her heart. From that moment, she could no longer recall the features of that woman. She wanted to cry, yet tears would not fall. Instead, she felt a deep ache in her chest. From that instant, she saw reality clearly. More important than love or kinship was the cold, hard truth of money. At that moment, she resolved to work tirelessly to earn enough money so that the woman who abandoned her would regret her choice. Soon after, at just 15 years old, she learned to work. To save money, she endured mockery from her relatives, shamelessly borrowing and even learning to fend for herself. Living on nothing but a loaf of bread, working over 10 hours a day was exhausting. Yet each time she checked her balance, a flicker of joy lit up her spirit. But now, doubts crept in. Was all this truly worthwhile even if she made that woman regret her actions? What then? She remained forever alone. Without family, without friends, and lacking even a dream. What was the meaning of her life? And Qiu Nu gazed into her own soul, tears streaming down her face. Under the influence of the spirit, she relinquished her desire to survive, realizing that an opportunity was drawing near. The vengeful spirit opened its mouth wide, ready to devour the girl. Just then, a fist as large as a sandbag slammed into its face, sending the spirit flying. The owner of that arm was none other than Zhuang Xiaoran. And Qiu Nu stood in a daze. Witnessing this scene, the man before her became the only light in her eyes. As the vengeful spirit was about to engulf her, in that split second, Zhuang Xiaoran transformed into a hero, delivering a powerful punch to save the damsel in distress. Watching the man come to her rescue, all her grievances and fears dissipated in an instant, and Qiu Nu burst into tears. Dai Lai, witnessing this, wanted to seize the moment to escape. But Zhuang Xiaoran noticed her, inquiring about the remaining time before the exit was sealed. Receiving the answer that there was still half a cup of tea left, he seemed satisfied, saying there was enough time for him to play for 2 more minutes. The girl behind him stealthily stood up and suddenly attacked in front of him. Using the same trick, Tang Jie was momentarily taken aback as the creature immediately opened its mouth, ready to bite him, but in response, it met with a merciless slap. What do you think you're doing in the end? He got slapped due to its foul breath. Li Lei, standing beside him, stared in disbelief. Suddenly, a rumbling sound grew closer. The two turned their heads towards the noise, only to see a horde of ferocious spirits of varying shapes charging towards them. At this moment, Tang Ji also became serious, instructing Conhu to stay behind and not to act recklessly. Now it's my turn to play. At this moment, his left hand crackled as streaks of green light appeared on the back of his hand. They then spread up his arm to his head. Once completed, the air shimmered with a ghostly green light. Tang Ji grinned wickedly. This move was too destructive to be used in the human world. It was restricted there, but here he could unleash it freely. Watching the approaching spirits, the man before them showed no fear, grinning malevolently as he invoked his magic. Bolts of lightning coiled around his arm, forming 3 lightning orbs, which he hurled towards the rampaging spirits. As the lightning orbs neared the spirits, they collided and merged, exploding amidst the horde. Instantly, the surrounding space was filled with crackling power. The spirits were struck by the lightning, their bodies trembling and howling incessantly. The devastation continued to expand, claiming even those airborne. Before long, the ground was strewn with the lifeless forms of the defeated. Tang Ji withdrew his power, turning to Conhu, who, before he could respond, wrapped her arms around him. Then, with a gentle push of her toes against the ground, a whirlwind whisked them into the sky. They soared into the sky, reaching an exit. Li, witnessing the demon's departure, finally sighed in relief, yet curiosity gnawed at her. Who was he that could leave without being captured? She had never seen, nor even heard of someone like him. Who exactly is this person? Meanwhile, in another location, several spirits were paying attention to Tang Ji's trajectory. One spirit inquired, "Should we investigate?" The other replied, "No, no one is allowed to move a step away from the master." His gaze shifted towards the narrowing entrance, within which a golden light was intensifying. Inside, they could see a golden gemstone, and within that gemstone, the so-called master was a headless demon king, adorned with mysterious black circles all over his form. At this moment, in another world, Han Long was still exuding a fragrant aura. His subordinates witnessed an unbelievable sight as a massive claw slowly emerged from the mouth of the colossal beast. Following that, Tang Ji, carrying Conhu, broke through the barrier. The moment they exited, Conhu suddenly froze. Shortly after, the darkness in his pupils began to spread across the whites of his eyes. In an instant, the beast and the monk finally made it back to the human world. The beast's head gradually retracted, vanishing into the sky. Tang Ji embraced him as they landed atop a rooftop. Seeing this scene, Su Wei shouted in anger, "This kid, after all the effort we put into releasing him, why did you bring him back?" Tang Ki replied, "I'm trying to help you. Why are you still yelling at me?" But at that moment, Xiao Ren's feet suddenly appeared, with his pupils completely turning golden. Tang Ki was momentarily stunned before launching an attack, shattering those feet to pieces. And Conhu was knocked unconscious as well. "We've put in so much effort to subdue him. He suddenly completed everything with a single strike. Just moments ago, he had the breath of a human, and now he had transformed into something else." Regardless, since this involved matters of humanity, they had no right to intervene. The two then set up a teleportation array to return. But the fat man still had his doubts. How could Tang Ki know he's still human? The skinny sister mentioned a type of cypress tree, which was a proprietary secret of the Tao. But for someone so young to have cultivated this cypress, that's truly impressive. After the two left, Tang Ki gazed at the unconscious Conhu. He felt lost, unsure of what to do. Just then, a furious roar erupted from behind. Han Long Kui, with a dark expression, said, "Thank you for returning. In 3 minutes. If not, you'll face the consequences." Tang Ki broke into a cold sweat and forced a smile. Upon returning to headquarters, Conhu was taken into the laboratory. 2 researchers were examining her condition while a few others monitored from outside the glass. Reports indicated that over 100 people had died at the site, while there were no casualties elsewhere. Hearing this, Tan Long Kui immediately erupted in fury. Han Long Kui pointed menacingly at Tang Ki. Tang Ki had never expected the mission in Egypt to turn into a situation in Bunnet. He hastily explained that he had merely accepted the order and gone there. However, it seemed Xiao Ren had sensed danger and had slipped away early. He then cast a suspicious glance at Conhu. Is she considered a human or a monster now? At that moment, a researcher held a huge syringe, preparing to draw blood for examination. Yet, even with the bent needle, it couldn't penetrate her skin. Then he saw another researcher emerge with a power drill in hand. He said, "Let me handle this."